Our next, the great and powerful Oz has spoken. Our next meeting is the Sewer Utility District Commission. If you could call the roll, please.
Commissioner Strelchuk.
Here.
Commissioner Bushy.
Here.
Commissioner Meyer.
Here.
Commissioner Hancher.
Here.
Commissioner Garrell.
Here.
Commissioner Schneider.
Here.
Commissioner Nerbin.
Here.
Commissioner Worth.
Here. The first item of business is a resolution. I would ask, don't we have any minutes from some prior
Oh, it
meeting?
was just last week. We didn't have time
Okay,
to
that's
turn
fine.
it around. Sorry.
That's okay, just wanted to ask. The first item is a resolution 3658, a resolution approving the 2020 sanitary sewer budget and establishing the 2020 sanitary sewer user fee schedule. Ms. Lundeen, are you going to enlighten us, or is
I will
someone
otherwise
else?
start, but we'll be happy to both take any questions that you may have. In your packets are two documents. The second one actually is the proposed 2020 budget for the sewer utility. It proposes a level user rate and a decrease in levy, which, assuming the mayor's otherwise going to ask, includes the non-metered user charge per quarter of $73, the meter user rate charge of $6.633 per thousand gallon, and a sewer district tax rate proposal of $1.97 per $1,000. Because of adequate funding levels, we are proposing again a level user rate and a decrease in the overall levy. The utilities got into a healthy place with respect to capital funding, and due to both some of the project-based being on the East Trunk Sewer project for some time now, and other healthy capital funding, we are able to keep the user rate stable and otherwise decrease the levy. So tonight, didn't bother us doing the water utility, but, so tonight, we're looking for any comments on the proposed budget as was otherwise presented. So we're looking for any comments on the proposed budget as is otherwise included in the packets. And then last week, with the decision to opt out of the green infrastructure program, some of that decision will have an impact on the final budget. We notified MMSD last week, Wednesday, of the choice to opt out, which will result in a decrease of MMSD charges. We don't yet have the updated numbers from MMSD to otherwise regenerate the budget. So we're looking for guidance from this body in terms of how to address that savings. That the reduced charges could affect both the sewer levy and the user charge. So we're looking for a recommendation so that we can revise the budget numbers as appropriate to bring back for its final approval at the November 12th meeting. We tried to outline in the document what some of those options are, which include reducing the sewer levy, maintaining the sewer levy at the previously recommended levels and using the additional revenue of savings for self-funded capital or some combination therein. In addition, we do anticipate that some of the savings will impact the billing rate, which would have an effect on the sewer rate charges. So we could either, again, reduce the sewer rate, maintain at the recommended level, and use that to address other utility expenses or a combination therein. So again, we're looking both for comments on the original budget as otherwise proposed and for feedback in terms of how to address the anticipated reduction in MMSD charges.
We want to take those up in reverse order, since, or one's more narrow, and then talk about the budget as a whole, or do you prefer we I mean, I think those are two
Either way,
separate.
the budget as otherwise presented is what you obviously have solid numbers for. We don't anticipate any changes on the expense side. So those would all remain the same with the exception of the MMSD charges. And so that's what will otherwise be updated for the November 12th meeting.
Alderman Bushi, you look like you want to talk.
Yes, I was just going to make a comment.
Sure.
And this is regarding
Can you pull it forward?
Yes, this is regarding the GI program reduction of $1,015,000 that the concept in here is put 925 towards capital projects and the remainder as a reduction. And personally, I look at it that, the adage that taxes, once they go up, they don't go down. I think that it would be appropriate for most of the funds, if not all, to go back to the customers who end up saving, on their behalf. And so I would recommend towards the other direction, if not all towards the million or whatever it comes out to, going back to ratepayers.
Anybody else? Alderman Nervin.
Can you refresh my memory? What was that charge for the GI initiative last year? There was something like 460,000 last year. It was projected to be over $1 million this year, and then we opted out.
Yeah, I think it was 520-ish because it was not quite a complete doubling of the fee from the year. I can look it up.
I think there's also some future requirement for our total load of the phosphorus that it's still unknown what we need to do, and that was part of the reason for being in the program. We'll still need to do something in the future. We just don't know what something is because
Correct.
how they're going to phase it in hasn't been identified, so we may want to.
But is
not
that
give
the
it all
sewer
away.
utility that needs to, or is that the city that needs to?
I'm sure the sewer service area needs to do something for itself and the rest
Can you
of the
pull
city.
that forward? It's,
Yeah, the rest of the city might need to do something for the rest of the city. I don't
well,
know.
let me
We plan to-
address that to Ms. Lundin. Are the phosphorus requirements directed to the sewer utility or to the city?
To the city through its MS4 program, or its municipal separated sewer.
So the question, which is still the question we posed last week in talking about the green infrastructure, is this a place where we should be adding taxes to the sewer utility or to the city as a whole, if in fact we have this additional cost?
Well, if it's just to the city and not just the sewer service area, then you'd be balling it all up by piling it on here.
Yeah, and that's what kind of the reason, at least why I was opposed to the green infrastructure, biggest reason I was opposed to the green infrastructure program. Other comments or questions? We have a recommendation from staff. We have Alderman Bushi, who has suggested that maybe there should be more tax relief and less, let's just keep it because we got it. Other aldermen, commissioners.
I do have a
Alderman
final
Lundy,
answer. It was 572, 536 in 2019.
I meant Miss Lundin, I called you alderman. That was insulting.
No.
So what do we want to do here, folks?
Well, and maybe
You may.
to make it simpler, did anyone otherwise have any comments on the allocation for the budget as originally proposed? Oh, so,
Alderman
oh,
Gill.
I don't have a whole lot to say. I just thought that what Alderman Bushy said was, I sort of agree with that. I mean, it should go back to where it came from.
Well, one question I guess I had is, did it all come from the sewer tax rate, or was some portion of it funded through the user rate?
You are correct. So it will impact, actually, I think, 3 different costs. With the MMSD capital charges, which is what most directly affects the sewer levy, but there is some savings in the O&M charges from MMSD for the green infrastructure projects. And we anticipate that that's what will impact the billing rate from MMSD that would otherwise affect our user charge.
So to the extent that we're going to go the direction that Commissioner Boucher has suggested, it really isn't just the tax rate. It's, again, maybe Commissioner Gill said it the right way, put it back to the users who otherwise would have been paying it. If that's the route we want to go, and the question is it all or most or what? I mean, my position is we assumed we were accumulating enough capital money for the utility when that $1 million was going towards green infrastructure. So therefore, do we really need to add more money towards capital to a capital fund without it? And let me ask for at least staff's view on that.
Well, and I think with all due respect, we're always trying to be conscious when we propose the amount of self-funding capital to be aware of how it affects both the levy and the rate. So we're trying to be conscious of how much we are otherwise taxing for self-funded capital. There is no question that there's the needs in the system, certainly both for the rehabilitation of the existing system, improvements and capacity considerations. I mean, we know that as we continue to gain more users, whether that's through new subdivisions or whether that's the contemplation of the East Growth area and what may otherwise come out of that, that there are capital needs associated with all of that. And so from our perspective, we try to do the best of balancing those two, which is why we've otherwise suggested at this point to try and maintain relatively stable rates as it affects both the levy and the user rate itself, so that we can maintain good capital funding. And certainly if we go into look in future years and we find that we're still in as good of a position as we are with respect to self-funding capital, then we can continue to either maintain the rate or even reduce the rate a little bit more. I think our biggest concern with a large drop in capital is how in the capital funding is how we would otherwise recover, at least in terms of rates. Would we ever be willing to go in the other direction and increase rates by 25 cents?
Alderman Strelchek.
Just kind of broad brushstroke from my standpoint. Having a balanced rate is important so people and users know what to expect. I agree with Alderman Bushy that if there's funds that we can give back when they're available, we give them back to the residents. But if we're going to underfund something by doing that and then potentially be stuck with a reactionary repair, maintenance or something in the future where we could have a spike in the rates, these people plan on these rates being consistent year in and year out, maybe going down, maybe barely going up. They don't plan on a spike. So can you comment a little bit on if we do give this back at this point, would we be expecting a spike in the future?
Sure. So obviously for the last decade or more, we've otherwise all been talking about and anticipating the East Trunk Sewer project. And we were kind of blessed with the timing of having the debt from the MMSD sewer wars fall off, as we were otherwise ready to bring on the new debt for the East Trunk Sewer project. So we were otherwise able to kind of absorb that new borrowing without a large impact to the sewer users. However, having added that back on, we've kind of lost that cushion, so to speak. So from our perspective, not only having adequate self-funding for the projects that we've otherwise listed in here for the 5-year plan, But knowing that it's not only expensive but catastrophic if a lift station fails, and we win the award in MMSD of having the most lift stations. So, as we otherwise look towards ways to be able to try and benefit our users, one of them is having that self-funding to otherwise be able to dedicate to those projects. Kevin is otherwise looking at one of our largest lift stations in terms of a condition assessment and what may otherwise need to happen. And frankly, that can range anywhere from $2 to $4 million, depending on what the results of that are. So by maintaining not only level rates, but then otherwise providing funding for projects like that, then we would potentially be able to avoid needing a borrowing for a project like that once it comes along. And again, we obviously review this on an annual basis. So regardless of the decision, even if it's to keep a relatively stable rate, we look at it again next year. And so if, again, we're in a place where the capital is such that we can look at keeping rates stable again, then from my perspective, that's a good message to otherwise be able to give our utility users.
Alderman Giro.
I just thought of both sides of the coin. I mean, typically, not at this level, but at the big government level, I always say they take 40% of everything I earn and then squander it somewhere, but that's not the case in Mequon. So I think that keeping some of it for a rainy day or keeping it on for future projects is probably prudent. Be nice if we could give some back, because it does keep it stable. And if somebody doesn't see the reduction, they're gonna miss it. I mean, it keeps it stable all the way through. So I'm sort of 50-50 on this one now that I listened to your explanation. But I always, my first instinct is always to, give the money back to the people who paid it if you don't need it. So I can see the other side of the coin on this too, is that if we're going to have to, in the future, going to have to raise their rates. So I'm probably 60-40 right now.
Alderman Nervin.
I was wondering about.
So just so I understand correctly, the budget as currently proposed would,
Can you speak up? For some reason,
Yeah.
I'm having trouble hearing you down there
it's this
tonight.
mic, it's never been good.
Okay.
I could get closer, but it'd be a little creepy. The current budget proposes 925,000 of the otherwise what would have been budgeted at $1,015,000 to be reserved, which is okay. What would have happened if MMSD had kept the green infrastructure charge the same and we had opted in?
So
We
that,
wouldn't be asking for the extra.
nope. So the
300,000 on
budget
top of
as
that.
presented is the version as if we were in.
As if we were in.
As if we were in.
Okay.
So that's what's otherwise shown. So unfortunately, it's not.
If we were in and it was half the charge, we would have been in, and we still would have had a lower rate.
Right.
I don't. If we want to save a little bit for a rainy day, maybe just pretend like we're in at last year's rate, because that's what we were doing last year, and then the other $500,000 could go back to the user community. That accomplishes both goals of putting a little away for a rainy day and still giving a sizable chunk back to the users. And maybe next year, if we're still doing well, I'm happily could choose to give more back. But
Alderman Boucher.
I think those are both sound statements from commissioners on that side. I would actually like to see the projects that you just mentioned as actually specific items in the budget. So, are
The
they?
condition assessment is, the
Okay.
lift station E condition assessment is, and then obviously as the project would carry through, it would become a capital
Okay,
project.
to me, that would just make more sense that, like you said, just said that they're in the budget and it's not a fund up with other projects.
Your mark.
Yeah,
Anyone else? Might I suggest a
The I was just trying to verify with the finance director, he's otherwise requested that we do a hard amount for what we would otherwise do for self-funding, right? Otherwise looking for. So again, as I'm trying to otherwise pull it up, the 2019 number for GI was 572, and I just lost the 536.
I was going to suggest that we split it in half.
To go with that.
That's
pretty close.
Just so I know,
That's effectively
the million 15 and half?
Yes,
Okay.
if it seems the direction we're going, it goes to the weird 572. Well, it's still probably an odd number. Do we have a motion to approve this and remember to recommend this to the council? Yeah, on November 12th, I presume we'll see actual numbers and actual effects, hopefully.
Correct. So both with the updated charges from MMSD once they're otherwise received, and then with the direction tonight, we'll redo the budget documents and otherwise update them for your final approval on November 12th.
So do we have a motion
So
to,
I move to approve the expenditure of 50% of the GI savings on however it's allocated.
I couldn't quite hear you, the whole
With-
budget, but with half of the GI?
Correct.
Got it. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second?
Second.
We have two motions and two seconds. Could we call the roll, please?
Commissioner Strelczyk,
Aye.
Commissioner Bushy.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hancher,
Aye.
Commissioner Garrell,
Aye.
Commissioner Schneider,
Aye.
Commissioner Nervin.
Aye.
Commissioner Worth.
Aye. The next item of business is Resolution 3657, a resolution prioritizing areas for inflow and infiltration reduction implementation. Before we start, there are 5 people in the back of the room who are here probably interested in some particular item. If in fact you want it to be heard on any of the items left on our agenda, if you want to fill out a slip back there and hand it to the table, we'll know where to pitch in. Or if you're just here to listen, that's great also. So if, Ms. Lundin, are you going to lead us on Resolution 3657, or Mr. Driscoll, are you?
Yes, sir. The purpose of this item is to prioritize areas for implementing inflow and infiltration reduction that benefits the sanitary sewer system. This work will continue to address sanitary system improvements with inflow and infiltration reduction from private property sources using funds allocated by the MMSD to the city. Coincidentally, after the preparation of this report in early October, nearly 5 inches of rain accumulated in a 48-hour period, and a sanitary sewer overflow occurred within these priority areas. The overflow was intentionally released to prevent basement backups, and it was reported to the DNR. With authorization of this resolution, staff intends to establish a work plan and a funding agreement with MMSD. This will provide reimbursement funding to identify and repair any defects in laterals, such as leaks and cracks and roots that are sources of I&I and that are also in need of repair. In addition, staff intends to perform outreach with owners to request volunteer participation in this I&I reduction effort.
Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. Comments, questions, or a motion from the commission?
Recommend approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Bushy.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hancher,
Aye.
Commissioner Garrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider,
Aye.
Didn't punch.
Commissioner Nervin.
Aye.
Commissioner Worth,
Aye.
Commissioner Strelczyk.
Aye.
He comes after me. Then we have three discussion items on the agenda. The first is the summary of the pilot project for private property inflow and infiltration reduction.
All right, thank you. So in 2014, the pilot project was started where there was an investigation of numerous laterals. And during that investigation with closed circuit TV cameras, which is CCTV, they identified a number of defects such as leaks and cracks and roots, which are sources of infiltration, and that infiltration can lead to overflows. So in 2015, there was a pilot project policy that was established. In 2016, staff performed outreach to begin signing up volunteers to participate in this PPI&I project. And then in 2017, there was a contract awarded to MBI, and the work was completed in 2018. This work addresses over 80 defects in 34 laterals. The work was completed, and then post-installation CCTV exams were provided prior to payment, and no defects were evident in those exams. In 2019, warranty exams were completed, and a number of defects were found in 18 laterals, such as circumferential cracks of the liners or active infiltration. The contractor's been notified of these defects and has proposed to remedy these defects on a case-by-case basis. It's staff's intent to make the SEDC aware of these defects prior to notifying and performing outreach to property owners. As stated in this memo, this is an informational only item and no action is being requested.
Any questions or comments from the commission?
I'm just wondering,
Snyder.
that seems like a high failure rate in a brief period of time. Was that unexpected, I'm assuming?
Yes.
And do we have some sense of what the issue was?
Yes, it's my understanding it's a combination of both the material and the installation process for this lateral lining, which is a cured in place pipe lining process.
So-
We're not the only community that had warranty exams. Unfortunately, we're just the lucky winner of the largest percentage of failures.
Was this a new process or material that was being used in this case?
It's my understanding that the resin material that was used changed over a course of time, and the defects are concentrated in this new resin material.
Oh.
So the contractor is looking at going back to the old resin material.
To patch it or?
Yes,
Okay.
to make patches at the circumferential cracks and the leaks. That's the proposed remedy.
Now, we do have a 10-year warranty, is that correct?
That's correct.
So will we be following up periodically with the other properties where it appears to have worked for a year, but to find out if we have a problem 2 or 3 or 5 years down the road?
So warranty exams were included in the contract for the 3-year period. And staff has had discussions with the contractor, and they've been willing to come back and do what it takes to make it right. So in our negotiations with looking at remedies, it's my understanding that additional exams will be completed immediately following the remedies, and then further discussion can be had for additional warranty exams within that 10-year period.
So I
So-
take it that's a yes, we'll keep checking them.
Yes, we'll keep checking, yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this item? Alderman Urban.
I just think you made an excellent point. If we've experienced a few failures now, we're going to keep on seeing them pop up, I would expect. So repair it on a location-specific basis, I'm sure. They're not going to reline the whole lateral. Yeah, so it'll be fine there. It'll just fail a few inches away, and we'll keep on chasing this. That's my prediction, but I'm not a sewer lining expert, but
Although I will also just remind everyone that the reason why this project came about was because these laterals had failures in the first place. So, when we look at the repair and the warranty therein as compared to the previous conditions that the property owners may have otherwise been aware of, at least if nothing else, this has brought their awareness to it so that within this period of time, they can be more conscious of how their lateral is functioning.
Alderman Strelchak.
So just to be clear, we have a change in material, a resin material. So we have a known defective product that was used on the laterals. We're doing inspections at the failure site and then a couple other additional inspections. Is that scope going to be broad enough where we're going to do inspections in all of the areas that the known faulty material is being used to pre-game so that we don't have failure in the future? I mean, failure is a pretty large inconvenience.
So the warranty exams were completed on all of the laterals where the lining material was installed.
Right. That's what I wanted to be clear on and make sure that we're on the same page.
And the where a remedy is performed, the exam will be completed on that lateral following that installation.
Great. Perfect.
Alderman Meyer.
But, I'm sorry, did you?
Perfect.
Yeah. But even with that, I would highly recommend that, the follow-up inspection is more towards the end of that warranty for it, even though if they've gone through now, they've done all the corrections inside of it, 7 years down the road, we should have some kind of follow-up at that point, so that we don't discover something in the 11th year that we should have been checking on in the 9th year, and now we're paying for it. So,
Well, and we can certainly try to work through that process with the contractor. Just a reminder, these are all private laterals. So while we can certainly recommend that on behalf of the property owners, it's really up to them as to whether or not they'd provide the access for that follow-up.
Are we ready to move on to our next discussion item? Testing inflow and infiltration reduction along River Road and Haven Avenue.
Okay, in 2007, an inflow and infiltration reduction project was completed along River Road and Haven Avenue in the Lift Station C sewer area. MMSD has requested additional testing to verify the effectiveness of this work over 10 years ago. Again, it is staff's intent to notify the SEDC prior to outreach with the property owners, and no action is required as this testing and any restoration will be paid for by MMSD.
Sounds like a good deal. We need to discuss that further.
no.
And finally, the East Trunk Sewer Project update, fall of 2019.
Okay. Make it quick. So the East Trunk Sewer Project update. Tunneling is completed ahead of schedule and under budget. Restoration is substantially completed and a few punch list items are outstanding. In early October, as I stated before, nearly 5 inches of rain accumulated in a 48-hour period, and the East Trunk Sewer operated as designed without an overflow. However, an overflow did occur at Lift Station E on Oriole Lane as a result of inflow being greater than the capacity there. Staff has installed meters in the East Trunk sewer system and throughout the system to monitor operations and evaluate performance for future system improvement planning. This is an informational item only and no action is required.
And the only thing I'll add is the contract is not yet closed out. So we'll give the reason why this is a fall update instead of a complete summary is we've not yet completely closed out the project. So you all recently saw in the Friday bulletin, we've hired a contractor to come in to help with the restoration, specifically in the dog park and on a berm adjacent to one of the subdivisions. So that will help address some of the restoration. Kevin went through a walkthrough with the contractor to otherwise address final punch list items. So we anticipate in the spring, after the project's finally been closed out and we've gotten through the full project audit, that we'll come back with a full report on the closeout of the project, including the final financials.
On time and under budget. Can we do that for all projects?
He's being modest. I mean, if you all recall, this project was supposed to take us at least through spring of next year. And while we're reporting that tunneling is done, tunneling's been done for 2 months. So, through the hard work of Kevin, through coordination with all of the property owners, we got through the project relatively unscathed. I am not going to sit here and say it was not an inconvenience for those that were along there, but considering the length of 48-inch pipe that was driven through the ground in this area, it's quite an accomplishment for us to be sitting where we are with not only the project done, but making it through the first rainfall event that we otherwise needed it, with it in service so that it all stayed inside of the pipes instead of over the ground.
Alderman Boucher, I saw your hand raised.
Yes, I was going to actually echo your thoughts, those great words of ahead of schedule and under budget, but also thank you for being on top of it and following through. And I assume the original residents who spurred the need for this are quite happy with their basements.
They're not exactly flooding us with thank you calls, but we're hearing it, so we're.
It's on their behalf. And
the
to not
silence
hear the
speaks
problem,
volumes.
yes, that's
so.
good. I'm just thinking, I like the write-up start here for that final document of essentially like a postmortem analysis, because I assume at some point down the road, this isn't only one project of this nature, where there's discussions of the sewer expansion in other directions. And I think it would be great to have perspectives from different angles that may even, as to what went. Actually, one of the questions that we asked earlier, what can be improved, what went well. I was even thinking that former Mayor Abendroth would have some opinions from his level all the way down to the individuals who are out there holding signs to change traffic and deal with that. That it would be really good, I think, to us to be able to get that feedback so we can look at it. So when going forward, that whoever's in charge of that is, this was an obstacle that was before. How can we try to work around it? And so the more details in that, and again, opportunities for improvement would be great.
Yeah, so can I follow up with a comment in response to Alderman Bushy?
Can't hear you.
A comment in response to Alderman Bushy's statement about input on the project outreach. So property owners and businesses aren't surprised. That was a very important part of the project, to provide awareness, public information meetings. So that was one critical piece. I think that
I
was
think what
part of
Alderman
the
Boucher is
success.
also suggesting is a postmortem, despite the fact that it's under budget and on time, to ask for comments after the fact to see if, despite how well it went, if there are any learning experiences we ought to
I
have.
think two aldermen in particular have a whole volume of emails that they'd otherwise be willing to share from at least some residents. Kevin certainly has some from some of the business owners on Port Washington Road. But yes, from at least from the feedback we otherwise have or can otherwise get, we'd be happy to share that as a learning moment for moving forward. I know you've previously asked about the easements that we otherwise have to negotiate. You recall at one point we introduced two very scary words to all of you to contemplate as a part of that project when we otherwise considered the use of eminent domain. So to be able to speak to how we otherwise got through the project without having to exercise those ultimately.
Any other comments? Well,
Good job.
Good job. We'll have some more discussion, probably even at the council meeting in November, about some issues that came up. But other than that, great job. And there's one last item on our agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
I think we had three. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You're adjourned.